Now let's move on to the second half of hands-on session. The goal of this video is you actually make a LAN cable. When we make many LAN cables, we usually buy them in a box containing 100 meters like this. So pull out from here the length you want and cut it with scissors. Here, this should be slightly longer than the length you really need. As we saw in the previous video, there are 8 copper cables inside. Then the outer layer of the cable is covered with a plastic coating. There are 3 tools that are necessary to make LAN cables. I'd like to introduce them here. These 3 tools. First, this yellow tool is a stripper. If you look closely, you can see the blade attached here. This is for peeling off the outer coating. Next, this is a crimping machine. This is a machine crushing and crimping the connector at the end of the LAN cable. There is one thing you have to be careful about. Although we want to use it this time, there is a blade here to cut the LAN cable. Be careful not to crush your finger when you use this, or you will injure your finger. The last thing to use is a tester. This is a tester. This is a tool to check whether the LAN cable is connected electrically. So I'd like to work with these 3 items. I'll make a LAN cable using the cable I just cut. In addition, I will also need these RJ45 connectors. Needless to say, you will need connectors on both ends, so please take 2 of them from this package. If you fail to attach the connector, feel free to cut it away. So, if you fail, you can cut off the entire end including connectors and remake by peeling off the coating and attaching a connector once more. So remaking is possible, just what is important is don't be nervous. Let's do it! First, let's start by stripping the plastic coating of the cable. As we have checked this stripper has a blade here, like this. Can you see the blade? Moreover, there are also bumps here, so put the cable at the first one, like this. Can you see this? The cable is stuck in the first bump. Then turn the stripper and the cable. Now I'm turning the stripper, but you can also turn the cable. In this manner, the blade will hit and cut the cable. It is common to turn the cable, but if you turn the cable, it tends to shift from the original position, so I like to turn the stripper. Now it's cleanly cut, so pull it out and remove it. It looks like this. Now there are 8 copper wires inside. First, break up these 8 wires into 4 twisted pairs. Orange and orange-white cable, blue and blue-white cable, green and green-white cable, and brown and brown-white cable. Today we are going to rearrange these 8 cables in the order written on this paper called B connection and put them into the connector. We'll just put them in the order written on this paper. The first things we need to do is to untie the 4 twisted pairs into just separated 8 straight cables. This will make it easier to sort them. The only part that needs to be straightened is the part where the coring was removed. This is an example. Can you see this? Then rearrange them in the order of B connection. If you make a mistake in this order, the cable will corresponding differently and computer won't be able to communicate properly. So please be careful. If this rearrangement process is not done properly, you will have a hard time to attaching the connector later. It is important to straighten it out properly. Of course, you will have to do this a few times to master this. It is also important to straighten the cable until near the edge of coating and then lay out the edge cables completely flat. I hope you can master this process. What it looks like when it's straightened and rearranged is like this. I think it's much nicer than it looks like in this video. And then sketch them again from the above. If you look at it from the side like this, you can see the cables are almost lined up in the straight line. It is very important. Also, it is necessary that the end of LAN cable is aligned. So using scissors and setting a box or something others underneath, cut off the end of LAN cable like this. Then can you see that it is now completely aligned? Near the end aligned, so I'm going to move hand for holding like this. Hold the back end of the connector and put it into the connector like this. This is how it looks like. Be careful not to change the order of the cable and push them in completely at the end. The connector has 7 gloves inside and we need to insert L cables so that they cross over the gloves. In addition, it is also important to insert the connector completely. So at the final, we have to push on it well, like this, and check if it goes all the way in. At this point, there is something you should check. Here there is a triangle globes at the bottom here. I think it may be difficult to see in this video, but please check if the coating has reached this area. If it is not, the cable will not be fixed when you clamp them. So in that case, please cut the cable a little bit so that the cable coating reaches there. The next tool we used is this crimping machine. This may be difficult to see, but there are 3 holes and middle one corresponds to RJ45, so we'll stick it in here. Insert it into the middle hole, making sure that the connector is inserted perfectly and the direction of the pin of the connector is not reversed, and then grip the machine. As you grip, you will hear a quick sound like this, so grip until you reach the sound. Then you can let go off. Now the connector was binded. I'll explain what happened now. The triangle grooves I showed you earlier become deeper and larger as you grip the machine. As a result, coating will be crushed and fixed. This is a mechanism that binding the connector to the cable. Now you can bind the connector on one side. As I mentioned earlier about B connection, they need to be made in the same way on the both sides. This time I made the B connection pin from the first side of connector, setting the side with the connector pin down, and the first side up I made it by inserted 8 wires. So you need to make the other side as well. It is important to make sure that both sides have the same orientation. Now let's review what we've done so far. Let's do it again. Using this stripper, insert the cable at the first bump and turn it around to cut the coating. Now this may look like very easy, but in reality it is difficult until you get used to it. Now we have done to peel off the coating. Next we are going to untie each cable. Then we are going to rearrange the edge cable so that they match the B connection we made earlier. First, we're removing the twist, and once that was removed, we'll rearrange the order of them. After the rearrangement, we are going to flat them as if squashing them together vertically. After threading the cable straight and flat, and making sure it is lined up in the correct order, then cut off the end to be aligned. After confirming that the cable is straight and aligned, change the holding point and insert it into the connector like this. Make sure that the connector is completely inserted and push all the way in, and that glove is properly inserted. Use the middle of crimping machine to grip it until a quick sound. It's done. Both sides are now completed. Again, check if both sides are completely stuck. If it's okay, I'd like to move on. After we made both sides, to make sure it is working properly, we will use this tester. First, turn on the power. Don't forget to turn it off later. There are 3 modes: off, on, and S. Please turn to the middle one on. For now, turn it off. On this tester, there are 1, 2, 3 ports in front and 1 on the back. We will use this and this. These are RJ45 compatible. Stick both sides of LAN cable into this. Then we change the power from off to on and check if the lamps are glowing in order from the top. As you can see on the left part, it lights up from top to bottom. On the right side, if it lights up in the same order, it means correct. However, if the lamps light up in different order or if some of them do not light up, it means that you have made a mistake. In the left part of the tester, there is a battery, and through the cable, test if the electrical signal can reach to the other side correctly. This can check if the position of each cable is in the correct one-to-one correspondence. If they are not lined up properly, communication will not be possible. So please use this tester to check them properly. If you confirm everything working correctly, this is the end. If it fails, please cut off the connector that you thought it was wrong, and then make it again and test it again and again until it works. For example, when you light up the cable, it lights up from bottom to top. It means either of connector is facing the wrong way. This is a basic way to make a LAN cable. If you master these procedures, you can make any length of LAN cable you want. This time, I use this LAN cable, but there are also flat cables that can be laid under carpet without lamps. Usually, it would be difficult to make such a flat cable by yourself. However, if it is rounded cable like this, you can make it by yourself. When you need a LAN cable, please try to make it. Even if you do not need it, you can make it just for your practice. Anyway, please try to make a LAN cable. Of course, making a LAN cable is only one part of the whole computer system. However, it may be a good idea to actually try to make each of these components to understand how these are working. That's all for today. Because this is a good opportunity for hands-on, I'd like you all to make a LAN cable. Please try to light up beautifully like this. Then, please submit one cable you made as a completion of today's assignment. I recommend you to review this video again during your hands-on. This is the end of this video. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I hope you do well. Good luck!